Hey guys, it's Ben with design3 here, and I'm talking to Robin Hunicke, who is executive producer and designer at That Game Company. Thanks for talking to us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So what are some of your all-time favorite video games, and when did you start playing games?
Well, if you went out to the parking lot, you see that my license plate is KATAMR1 for Katamari, which is my all-time favorite video game, although a close second is Mule, first game I ever fell in love with.
And how did you get started in video game development?
I was actually a graduate student at Northwestern University studying dynamic difficulty adjustment and games. I was writing a mod for Half-Life that adjusted Half-Life according to how well you were performing to keep you at the peak performance. There's actually a game about that now. It's called Left 4 Dead. So as I was finishing my dissertation, I actually had been going to a lot of conferences, and I had a conversation with Will Wright about, hey, maybe it's time to start thinking about moving into industry. So I went out and interviewed with the Spore team, and I was like, those guys are too smart. I'm never going to be able to hack it on that team. And through a series of crazy events, I ended up on the Sims team. I was working on the Sims expansion packs. I worked on Open for Business, which was probably the most fun I've ever had at a job. It was a great team and a great game.
That's awesome. So how do you go about starting a new game, kind of the planning and designing of it?
For me, actually, I think it's a really collaborative experience, especially now that I've had a chance to work on several games. All the games I've worked on, with the exception of one, have been either a unique expansion of the game concept or a whole new IP. And so when you're designing a really new experience, you have to work with as many people as possible. So everyone from an artist to a sound designer, a writer if you have a writer, the designers themselves and the programmers especially all should have a huge impact, in my opinion, on the design of an initial concept. So I try to work with as many smart people as possible.
And in your opinion, how important is the community that of players that kind of forms around a new video game?
Well, actually, in many cases, especially with The Sims, the community becomes a huge influence on the design of the game. And when I was working on The Sims, eventually went to work on a small game called My Sims, which was our first foray onto the Wii. I would read the forums all the time and look at the community and see what they were saying about the concept and what would they want to see in a Nintendo platform version of The Sims. It's very important to listen to your users and to really love them and let them express their love for the product in ways that impact the product itself. So definitely think that the community is a huge impact.
And there's been a lot of debate about whether video games are or are not art. What is your opinion on that matter?
Actually, the president of my company, Kelly Santiago, gave a very influential TED Talk, which created some dialogue with a variety of people about whether or not games were art. And our official position is that we think it's already happened, so it's not really a debate. Now it's just a matter of what's next. Really accepting the fact that lots of people get inspired by games in lots of different ways, and one of them is when they just exist to produce a unique experience or cognitive change in a person, which we think is often the purpose of art. So it's already happened in our opinion.
So that kind of goes into my next question. You know, That Game Company is making games that are very artistic, you know, and striving for, you know, meaningful experiences for the players. Can you talk a little bit about that approach to game design?
One of the things that we really do is we try to think of what's in the space right now and what's a place where we're not having the feeling, what's the feeling that's missing in games, and how can we fill in that space? How could we create something, kind of sketch it into that place? And it depends on the game. This particular game that I'm working on now, Journey, was inspired by a conversation that Kelly in Genova had with an astronaut who'd taken many trips to the moon. He was actually a shuttle mission specialist. He drives the space shuttle. And what he said, which was really inspiring to the both of them and then to the rest of us as a result, was that people who fly to the moon often leave the Earth as mission specialists or scientists, and they think about everything very seriously. They're very much grounded in reality and not usually very spiritual or sort of open-minded people about that kind of thing. But when they come back from having stepped on the moon, they're transformed. And he said 100% of the time, they have a life-changing event while they're out there. And so we talked about that. What does that mean? And for us, when you can put your thumb over everything you've ever seen in your entire life, everything you've ever known, everything you've ever hoped for is just a little tiny speck surrounded by blackness, maybe it transforms your thinking. So we really started thinking about where would that feeling come from? How could we get people to think about the smallness of humanity and in a way use that feeling to think about how important people are, that there are so few of us, really, when you think about it in the universe. So that was the inspiration for our current game. And you know, as we've developed the game has changed, the inspirations have come and go, but it's still a strong feeling, that sense of awe, and feeling small, is a feeling that we don't get in a lot of games, and we want to make one that has that in it.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of consequences in video games?
Well, I personally, a lot of my research was about how if you can't experience a consequence, you can't feel real emotional attachment to the outcome of a game. And Journey would be a perfect example where you don't have to play with another person. It's an online game. But if you happen to run into someone while you're walking to the mountain and you stay with them, and then for some reason you're separated, maybe you'll have a feeling about that. Maybe that consequence will actually reverberate inside of you and make you think a little bit about companionship or togetherness. That kind of consequence is a permanent consequence. If you get separated, you may never meet again. And to me, that's the kind of design that really forces people to think a little bit and changes maybe how you might feel about what games can offer.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is completely new to game design and development and they want to get started making their own video games?
Make your own games. There's no time like the present. There are tons of great tools for making video games, and they're available. You can get stuff for free. Join a community, get on a forum, start making, and getting people to play your games. Don't just make them and then keep them on your computer. Share them, because even though feedback can be painful, it's essential for development, and you'll get much better if you get people to play them and criticize them a bit.
Okay, that brings me to the final question, possibly the hardest. If you had to sum up video game design in just one word, what would that one word be?
Curiosity.
All right, Robin, thanks a lot for talking to us today.
Thank you. It was great to meet you.
Appreciate it.
No problem.